Yes.
Well, well, we're happy to have you. I'll start off and just introduce myself, and then we'll sort of get into it because Mel is back, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to cover. Um, I'm Mike Stabile. I'm Director of Public Policy at Free Speech Coalition, which means that dealing with legislative and to some extent legal fights over things like age verification, Project 2025, and sort of all the sort of censorship that comes down the line. Um, I wanted to bring together some people today who have been really active in terms of using their voice and platform to advocate for political issues. We'll get into a little bit later into the webinar sort of some of the issues that we're actually facing. Regarding again age verification in Project 2025, censorship, and other forms of discrimination. When we get started off, what I want to say is if you have questions about these things, I know we've got a lot of people in the chat. If you have questions about whether it's getting involved or whether it's specific issues, whether you're arguing with friends or family or people online and you don't know how to answer certain things, put them in the chat. We'll get to those in the sort of second half. But for this, I want to start off and Lotus told us her origin story. Maybe introduce yourself a little bit more formally and Melrose, and then we'll get started.
Sure. I'm Melrose Michaels, adult creator, 12 plus years now, I think, in the industry. I founded a company called sexworkco.com to educate creators and performers to build their brands like businesses. And our goal is through that to also accomplish advocacy work. And basically, I believe that money tends to move the world, at least this country, it does anyway. So if we can get creators the resources to be financially successful and sustainable, then maybe we can use those resources to do important things that impact policy and legislation that, hurts our industry and our community. So that's kind of my background. And I think I'm just on this panel because I put out a video because I was really angry about something that impacted me very immediately and directly in my own state due to age verification. And using that and that experience has kind of been eye-opening and how we can use our voices and our platforms to impact and do advocacy work. So I think that's why I'm here and what I'm maybe bringing to the table.
Thanks. That's wonderful. You bring a lot to the table. I mean, we obviously have been an advocate for for creators and in multiple ways. I'm glad to have you as an activist as well. Lotus, do you want to? You've already sort of given your origin story, but do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more formally?
Sure. Yes. I'm Lotus Lain, pronoun she, her. I've been in the industry since 2012, as a performer, writer, director, producer, now advocate. Yeah, I just really have a passion for, um, protecting the legality of the industry so that we can all thrive and be our best slutty selves and make the most money that we can. Similar to you, Melrose, it shouldn't be this hard to be this slutty and beautiful and make money. So yeah, that's what I'm all about. Empowering the world out there to do this in the best, safest way possible.
Wonderful. And so, again, as we start getting in, we'll start getting into the issues a little bit later. But Melrose, you mentioned that you had created a video in terms of, I think, Tennessee legislation that had passed. Lotus, you've made a number of videos over the years. We were talking a little bit earlier about your voting video, putting the O in voting. But you've also been to Geneva. You've also testified. You've had, rants and raves online. And you're both sort of quite active in terms of your politics, right? In terms of on your main account feeds as well as others. So I wanted to start off and sort of talk about like what before you became active, before you got involved politically. You were both adult content creators. You weren't particularly political. What was the change? Like like if you could like once you started doing that, how was there a reaction? I think that there are a lot of people who are content creators who are worried about bringing politics in their feed, and I wondered what that was like for you, and um, you know, is it something that people should be concerned about?
Lotus, you want to
Lois,
take
you
that?
want to?
Sure, I can go. Okay, I will say for me, my career definitely didn't start out like activism. But then I think once I did start talking about things like you said on my main feed and that kind of thing, I did notice that the fans I attracted were more intelligent and thoughtful. They were less abusive. I attract a lot of college professors, people like that admire that aspect about me and want to like support it because they have similar views, or maybe they've been enlightened by some things that have been shared, so it kind of like opened up their minds and they're grateful for that. I have people that maybe are in relationships that they felt empowered to kind of open up about more about their sexual interests and things like that, maybe because of um the correlation of sex work and how it trickles down into different society norms and whatnot, things that they benefit from kind of open their mind to like the value of our work, and then they want to support it more. So I've noticed that change, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, so you're sort of saying that it actually, in some ways, improved your reach, right? It
Yeah, I would definitely say improve the quality of my reach, you know,
yeah.
the people that I attract, the fans that I attract, um, people that recognize me. It's for these reasons, and then they are the type of people that I am more likely to want to engage with personally. So it's more fulfilling in that way.
Melrose, was that your experience as well?
Yeah, I think like with many creators, I had concerns about like being vocal about politics in any way, especially politics as an idea, just because they see very drives people apart more often than not. You know, I'm not talking about religion or anything else that's going to be divisive on my socials and platforms, just because you want to cast the wide net and convert as many people as possible. But to Lotus's point, when you do start speaking to things that you hold valuable and important and that are important to your community that you belong to and are going to impact you and your friends and people you care about, one, it becomes very difficult not to speak on those issues, but you also filter people out and start to attract people that are going to resonate with those same things and help you drive those missions forward. So while it can be scary at first, and I'll say that like I didn't notice a drop off or anything when I started talking about politics or legislation, but I did notice a different quality of follower, fan, subscriber coming to the forefront. It was people that wanted to help, wanted to get involved, wanted to understand why this would, in what ways this would affect them too, because it's not just that it's going to affect me, it's going to also affect our fans and our consumers. So being able to filter those people to the forefront also gives me the right kind of reach to do better advocacy work because they're going to help with those missions and kind of subscribe to those ideas. So it's useful in the long run. It's definitely scary to get started, I would say.
What do you think drives engagement in terms of fans? So, like, you've both had experience talking with fans. Are there certain, again, we'll get into the content a little bit later, but are there certain types of messages? Are there certain types of things that seem to resonate a little bit more with them? Like, are you talking about, politics more broadly? Are you talking about things very narrowly? Are you sharing videos? Are you sharing articles? Like, or are you having just conversations? What do you see as driving engagement with fans?
Um, I feel like repetition. I feel like the more fans see something and maybe they're clueless about it, then they're more likely to be interested. Maybe just saying something once, they'll forget about it. They won't think it's as important, but especially because we all as a community have now more been talking about things like age verification or Project 2025. I see fans in their own conversations being like, wow, like, why isn't Pornhub talking more about Project 2025? Like, this is a big, so I can tell that we have gotten to them if they are thinking about that, you know?
Yeah, I've seen some of that myself as well. I think in terms of engagement though, it can you can own some of that even as a creator. Like for me, the only time I see engagement is when I ask for it. Like if there's a specific call to action, like retweet this, like this, comment on this, do this. Like if you give a clear call to action, that's when you're going to see the best engagement in my, experience. So when I'm doing stuff around advocacy or spreading information that I think is really important around policy or things coming, bills being created that are going to impact us in our industry, there's always a clear call to action, like retweet this or share this or, oppose this bill at this link. So I try to really, I feel like you only get one ask when you're putting something out there. So to make it very clear and concise and drive the end behavior that you want from the fan, like that's the only, especially around advocacy, that's the only engagement I care about. It's to spread the message or to oppose the thing or support the thing. For me, I try to focus on clear calls to action with any of my platforms.
Super interesting. So Lotus, we talked a little bit about you while we were getting started about you becoming sort of active. Um, and you were talking about a situation where the laws were actually going to affect you, right? Where like for people who are not aware, Measure B was local legislation in Los Angeles that would mandate condoms. There were also lots of regulations in terms of
I think
basically
they
they
wanted
wanted
to have
porn.
like random OSHA visits on set,
Yeah,
like, things like that.
they wanted to treat a porn set like a medical set, like gloves, goggles, right? That you couldn't have fluid interaction, right? Which, again, like age verification may seem to make sense on paper, isn't necessarily something that makes sense in the real world. So was that sort of what drove you? Was it that it was going to affect you, or was it just that somebody asked?
Well, I think it was that somebody asked at that time. I did hear about it, but I wasn't aware that our voice could have such an impact. This was like in 2015, 16, so this was before a lot of political activism and sex work became really aligned publicly. So at that point, there wasn't really like someone to look and say like, oh, they're doing that. That's how we do this type of thing, you know? So it was like, yeah, Lorelai, they asked me, and I was available. I, don't get super nervous public speaking. I'm able to talk about what we need to talk about in an engaging way. And that's what I said, like at that meeting, that then I realized from their reaction, their non-sex work exposed, reaction was, oh, they have never been exposed to people like us in real life. They've only seen us through the computer screen. So they only have their stereotypes in their mind of what they think it is we are and what they think it is we do. And my best called like form of action is to, speak for our community, let them know, show us, be myself, like be present, be at these hearings, be a fully fledged human that they can see and realize like there's a parent behind there, there's a person that contributes to society behind there. It's not this mystique persona. Yeah, like that's the character we create, but there's also a business behind it. And they didn't realize that, which is so strange. So yeah, it's that became a part of my mission.
And also like you see that there's an actual effect. I think that it's
Yeah,
easy it's easy to get dismayed and and to say I'm not. What does it matter if I do anything? But you're
right.
saying that there was an actual result out of this, out of sort of like
I
speaking
think we
your
beat
truth
that
out of,
one,
yeah.
didn't we? I can't remember, but
We beat Prop 60. Yeah, we beat a couple of them prior, but yeah.
yeah, so I mean, even when we FSC have had like Zoom meetings with politicians, and they aren't necessarily liberal leaning politicians. And we have conversations about how these bills, all these bills, all the years of bills will affect our industry and make it negative, make a negative impact on us to be able to do business. And the fact that these are small businesses and you're ruining small business, and you tie it into that, then you see this like, aha. And I love that so much, is kind of getting people that think they're so against our work to realize they're actually not. They're actually not. They've been brainwashed themselves.
Melrose, what when you so you created your video, right? Had you done remind me, I mean, you've actually been doing a number of things in terms of sex work. I mean, you guys both had a podcast together, right? You did a season of On the Horizon together. But you've been sort of talking about these issues. What drove your change? Like, what, you were a successful, creator, performer, you had building a house, doing all of this sort of stuff. What made you say, well, I want to actually start talking about issues?
Well, I think part of it is we've gotten such a large community of creators now, like following our channels and the stuff that we put out education-wise. It feels very much to me, and I was just having this conversation as well, like it's a privilege to have creators follow and subscribe to the stuff we put out and put it into practice for the purposes of growing their business. But with that, it also feels like a responsibility to keep our industry informed and to make sure that people know what's coming down the pipeline, people know how things are going to affect them. And then there was, so there's that responsibility that I felt. So I started doing and talking and being more outspoken about a lot of the stuff that was happening. But it wasn't until even just this, year with the age verification stuff that came down the pipeline for Tennessee specifically, where I was directly impacted because I live in Tennessee. So, they're trying to pass this age verification bill that not only criminalizes distribution of adult content online, but went so far to criminalize people in general, being me. So when this, it did get passed, I opposed it like hell, and all my friends helped, but we're in a red state, and this is, very conservative. So it's very, to be expected that this was going to happen. So now when you're personally affected, you get that much more personally motivated. So I'm a bit of a, fireball when I'm heated about something in general. So when it became very much directed at me, it became, tweeting legislators, tagging them and stuff, making sure they knew I was going to be a problem. Where can I go speak that's going to be in front of them or in their faces? I mean, I texted you, Mike, I texted Corey, I'm listed as plaintiffs on things. Like, I will go to the ends of the earth because you're not just messing with people I care about, but now you're also messing with me. And so I think when you're personally impacted or personally affected, or you really see how it's going to change the way you do business or the way your life might look, it becomes very personal. Like you said, I'm building a house in this state. It's not one I can pick up and move. I've invested the last 4 years of my income and my life to building it by hand with my husband. So to have to consider, like, I might have to move out of state or move my businesses after I just put such an investment in everything I've worked for, saved for, looked forward to, is heartbreaking. So when you're emotional about something, you can be motivated to do a lot of things.
And I think that that's maybe why people are maybe getting more involved than ever before, right? Because these laws, we now have 19 states that have passed age verification laws. Not all of them are in effect yet, but large numbers of them are. We've seen platforms pull out of states with the age verification laws for a variety of reasons. And that means that if you're advertising, or if you're working on that, or even if a platform is complying with the age verification laws and fans won't go through that platform anymore, that's affecting your income, right? And so, we're maybe in half of the states now, or close to half of the states now. As that goes on, that becomes a challenge to your ability to run a business, to make rent, to pay a mortgage, to pay for school, to do all of that stuff. And I think that it's really important to get creators more involved and feel more confident in this, because together, creators have such an incredible reach and voice, right? If you think about the millions and millions and millions and billions of fans that you have worldwide, that we have collectively, that's a huge audience to activate. And I think that, Melrose, you brought this up with age verification. This affects them too. If they're going to have to go to a site and they're going to upload an ID or have their face scanned, that's an invasion of their privacy, right? They're going to be concerned about that. They're not going to want that. And I feel like this is a chance to really have them, have them involved.
Absolutely. I think the fans maybe don't expect to be educated by creators oftentimes, but that's also where I think some education and information can be most effective because it's coming from a place that you don't expect it. And sometimes just having the platform or the moment to communicate something, which creators often have many of those moments. If you can do that, you have a gift, like you have the ability to do that, so why not use it for that purpose if you have that ability? And I think that's kind of what me and Lotus have both tried to do.
I'm curious in terms of resources, like where do for other creators who want to get started, you know, like, but don't maybe have a full handle on some of the issues or don't feel confident about them. Lotus, are there places that you depend on in terms of learning about these things? Are there, whether it's podcasts or people you follow or organizations, like you're involved in a lot of different things. Like what's valuable to you? What would you recommend to somebody who's saying, hey, listen, I want to get involved in the fight about age verification, but I'm not sure where to start?
Definitely following FSC. Like we are super on top of everything as far as like bills moving and anything like that. Like pay attention to our tweets, pay attention to our blog posts, sign up for our newsletter because a lot of that is in there, and as boring as all of that sounds, all of that is business related, and you're concerned about protecting your business. It really would benefit a lot of people to look into those things, look at our site where we have the resources page, and you can even like email us directly and we will guide you in the right direction. But I'm going to be working on making some little short form videos, especially about age verification, to kind of give examples of how easy it can be. I think sometimes people, myself included, can get daunted by the idea of making videos around something like politically related, especially if you don't feel 100% confident in your knowledge on the subject or what it is. And honestly, if you make it just really quick message, like, hey, make sure that you're opposing age verification in your state. If you're not aware of what that is, look it up and type in your state and educate yourselves. Like you don't have to spoon feed everybody education, but just putting that out there. And I don't know, maybe you're wearing a bikini while you say it, so they're paying extra close attention. But we're clever, we know how to get people to pay attention to us. So as you're getting attention, you can incorporate a message in a fun and playful way or in a seductive way or, dominating way, whatever it is that you offer and how you play with your fans. That's one way of thinking of how you can get involved. Um, Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but I think follow politicians that you care about. You can see what they're talking about. Um, the things that they tag, I follow those organizations, and then eventually you see tweets in your feed that relate to the things that we're talking about, and then you're aware.
And you brought up an important point, which is creators know how to get people engaged, right? Your whole business is commanding people's attention. And short form videos are really ideal in some ways. I'm really going to make a pitch for people posting short form videos, especially on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram, because not only do I want you to get that message out there, but in terms, for you, it's a way for you to create content on platforms that might be hostile to just sort of more NSFW content, right? It's a way for you to potentially go viral on some of these platforms that might otherwise be shadow banning you, and to get in. So I think that I want more people to talk about this in spaces outside the normal spaces we are in. Melrose, you created the video. Allison's linked it in the chat. Um, and we'll post it on our Twitter account as well. What was your process like?
Well, I was upset because it was going to be very much impacting me. And I thought, okay, well, if I can put out a video that explains the legislation and kind of what we're up against in a very small amount of time and gets all of the biggest points across, I could not only inform creators, but if fans came across that video, because obviously fans will watch and follow my stuff, then I'm, as a byproduct, also informing the fans. So the process was just making sure I understood what I was talking about, the policy, and that involved going to Free Speech Coalition's website, doing the research, reading through the blogs, also following them on Twitter, like Lotus mentioned. They put out like ways you can get activated, things you can do in real time. They put out these alerts, so I've been following their stuff forever, and they're probably my biggest source of information, to be honest. But so I went through the website, I made sure I understood everything. I also just talked to a lot of people that do know what they're talking about, Mike being one of them. Also just Corey, like I have a relationship with Corey Silverstein, so he was able to advise me on like just what I could say more or less. And then I just put some bullet points together of like the real big points I want to drive home. And then I started talking into the camera on my car. It started off with, I'm pissed, because I thought that would be a really good hook. And then people started watching it. So yeah, I just outlined the bullet points that I wanted to make sure I drove home. And I was really aware of the audience I was talking to was being other creators.
And I think that you brought up an important point, sort of Lotus, right? Which is FSC as a resource.
Sorry,
we're happy to
you
get,
know what?
yeah,
Another resource, because I feel like we're just like FSC, FSC, which
yeah.
we are honestly the best resource. But another one is ACLU. I get their emails, and a lot of their emails and tweet alerts are related to the stuff that we're fighting for too. It's like a lot of human rights, workers' rights, labor rights stuff. So that could be another source outside of just our echo chamber of FSC.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there are other I mean, I think that when you get into the minutia of age verification, or where you get in the minutia of Project 2025, there are lots of orgs who are putting out information from different angles on it,
Yeah.
right? There's lots of articles and things like that. You mentioned the newsletter, Lotus. We try to make sure that if there's any news on these issues, that we're sharing that as well, through that, so that people are educated, that you can see what it is. We spend so much time combing through everything that is written about these things. We try to digest it into pieces that will be helpful for creators and other people in the industry. And as Melrose mentioned, I'm happy to get on the phone, right? We're happy to sort of talk you through. If you're like, I want to get involved, I don't know, I'm having trouble understanding what this is, or how to articulate this, or even if it's just a simple question, would this work, or how does this work? We're happy to sort of give you guidance, right? We want you to use your voice. We want you to use your platform. We want this to be authentic to you, and because that's going to be ultimately the most powerful for getting the message out. But we're happy to be a resource. We're a real phone a friend. So whether it's Twitter or phone or email, reach out. I think we're
Yeah.
info@freespeechcoalition.com.
One thing I wanted to mention too is you don't have to like have someone call you to action, like what happened with me and Lorelei saying, hey, come speak at this, hearing. You can look up your local, hearings and politician town halls and things like that and show up. Like the reason town halls have like a bunch of yokels and crazy people is because they're the ones that show up. Like if you got your group of local sex workers wherever your community is hosting those kinds of things, especially now with an election year, you can go, whether you're being seen on camera and speaking into a microphone, you're there in person, you can engage with other people there. Those are often the conversations that I have that change people. Like I know when the last one we went to, Mike, with Congressman or Congresswoman Maxine,
Maxine Waters.
those conversations that we just had with other people in the audience and people that shared their cards, those were very valuable, more so than the moment getting up and talking to Maxine, because she was like, oh yeah, I remember you guys coming to DC. And it was more like okay, yeah, acknowledgement. But the conversations that we had personally, I felt were more effective. So there's so many different ways of engaging that you don't have to wait for a moment, I guess.
Yeah. And we have, I mean, there are so many different ways, right? There's emailing your Congress people. We have, there's calling your, legislator or writing a letter. It's talking about things online. It's creating a video. There's all these different ways you can get involved. You can get your toe wet and not
Yeah.
have to revamp your entire life.
And when you tweet at them with respect because you want them to respect us and our business. So I know we're angry and we're fiery and passionate, but the best response you're going to get is by like giving the kind of response you want to receive back too. So
Yeah.
just something to consider because I know we all get very passionate about this and I think coming at people is not gonna change their minds so much as like talking to them and letting them know of things that they might not be aware of.
Yeah. When we had we obviously fought a bunch of these age verification bills. About half of the age verification bills this year were killed, meaning they didn't advance, which is good. I think there's a lot of attention paid to the bills that do move forward. It's hard to remember sometimes that bills quietly were killed, or sometimes were publicly killed. And in the case of, I want to bring up Arizona, where you had a Republican legislature. They pushed these bills through. FSC went out and testified, and obviously rallied our allies. But one of the things, when it went to the governor's desk to get signed, one of the things that was the most impactful was the number of fans who wrote in and said, "I don't want this to happen to me. I am concerned about it." We had thousands and thousands of people, a lot of furries actually. They,
Love
they,
it.
they turned out to be a particularly activated audience, right? That said, "I don't want, I'm creating content. I am enjoying content. I don't think that I need to show my face and scan my ID in order to access the internet." And legislators do pay attention to that. They do pay attention to how many phone calls they've had, or how many emails they've had. So Melrose, when you were talking about tweeting out a link and saying send this out, right? When we send that from FSC, when we send that through our channels, it's really powerful. Like, don't discount it. I think that it's hard because you may not see on your end how many people are actually going through that process and doing it. And to Lotus's point, right? I can't remember whose Lotus's point, I think, was repetition, right? You may not do it the first time that you see one creator do it, right? You may see that, oh, what is that? I don't know what that is. The more that you hear it, the more that collectively are educating the fans and encouraging them to do it. And finally, they're like, okay, I should go and do this thing. Like, there's a lot of touch points before somebody actually becomes activated. So don't get dissuaded if, you're not seeing it immediately. You're part of a larger movement.
100%. It's almost like when you see an
Uh,
ad on Facebook too, you see it like 10 times before you buy it, but you probably are going to buy it. It's kind of like that. Just post the
yeah.
likes, post in the tweets.
So we're going to start moving into the sort of issue-based thing. I wanted to talk with each of you about sort of what issues you're most concerned about right now. Like, Lotus, I know that we've been involved in a lot of fights. Like, what do you like? What do you, as a creator, what are you sort of most fearful about, or what are you most activated about? Maybe is a better way of saying it.
Yes, activated, not fearful. Um, mm, I mean, I guess it's equal age verification and Project 2025 with a little bit of Agenda 47 under there too, because that's something that people don't talk about as much as Project 2025, but I guess on a certain website, a certain person is talking about Agenda 47 like in multiple ways, and it's like similar to the Project 2025 thing, but this is like explicitly on their website. So I don't know. Um, I just feel like there are multiple battles we're fighting on multiple fronts, and we really need to be like spidey sense aware because they are slipping things into bills. They're slipping bills in during like off session times and all these just sneaky tactics, typical sneaky tactics to just try and shut us down and silence us in so many ways. So now more than ever, we really should get activated because there are more of us than ever, especially more of us than there were in the 2015, 2016 days when I first started doing advocacy. Um, Even if it's just a side gig or whatever, or your entire income, this is really going to affect us, just like what Melrose said, like in their state or in her state. This could happen in your state. This is happening, being discussed in California, the most liberal state in the country. So it's not like anyone is immune to this, and we think we're all living the high life, working from home, making our own schedule, but it's not going to be so easy when we lose a significant chunk of income because a significant portion of our fans feel wary, as they should, about uploading and scanning their retinas and IDs front and back just to like get off for a couple of seconds. Like, we just really need to, like, I don't know, Avengers Force Unite, whatever it is that you think of, Care Bears Force Unite, whatever person you are, just start talking about this more because it's actually getting down to the wire and it is overwhelming. So
Yeah. And this is age verification, and these bills, as you mentioned, Project 2025, which says that pornography should be illegal and
yeah,
that
and not just that, like, we
creators
would
should
be
be
registered
arrested.
sex offenders, sex
Yeah,
educators would be registered sex offenders. Probably people that work at the sex shop down the street would be sex
yeah,
offenders. And then what kind of society would that create? It's such a weird underground that they would already be creating just to be sexual. So yeah, it's
yeah.
very much an important fight to fight up against.
Um, Melrose, you what are you motivated about?
Well, obviously age verification because it directly impacts me, but then also Project 2025 is very top of mind. Our fight with the Supreme Court is very top of mind. And just I think those are the things that scare me the most. Or I should say, activate me the most. Because they, not just my adult business as a creator is impacted, but as an educator is impacted as well. And everything I do business wise is adult industry adjacent. So like I thought I was super diversified, but maybe not. It's all the same industry. So it gets impacted across the board. So I think that's really the stuff I'm watching. It's Project 2025, the age verification and everything going on with the Supreme Court.
Yep.
That's the case. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, there is with both of these movements, right? There's an idea that they want to drive the entire industry underground. They want it to be like it was 50 years ago, 60 years ago, where it was dangerous to do, where your neighbor didn't think of becoming an OnlyFans model, or a creator, right? They want it to be dangerous and scary, both for consumers and for fans, right? They want you to feel unsafe going online and going to these websites. They want to sort of make the banking unstable. There's all these different ways in which they're using pressure, political pressure, to try to destabilize, what has become a massive creator industry. I've got a couple of questions that came from both online and that people put in the chat. I'll start off with this one from Sin Sage. How do you keep from being scared? It's so overwhelming. This is my entire livelihood. Any
Hmm.
advice?
I am scared.
I know, I was like,
I think we should all be pretty friggin' scared. Sometimes fear can be a really good motivator because we've seen this stuff coming for a while and not a lot of us have been super motivated. So, I like Mike, you even mentioned earlier, like you don't have to wait. Maybe it was your Lotus, but you don't have to wait till this impacts you. Like we shouldn't be waiting until things impact us personally. We should be doing them because they're protecting us and they're proactively protecting our industry and our communities. And when it's going to directly impact you, it's probably at the, your last up to bat, your last chance to do anything. So getting ahead of it, making sure you're taking action and driving behaviors now, proactively, I think is the best thing, but it is scary. I think we should be scared, because maybe that's going to motivate us to unite and do something as a community and as an industry. But I am scared. Absolutely. I've had really hard conversations about what this plays out like for me. What do we do? Will we sell the house? Will we change states? Will we move countries? This might not be something that it's going to be state selective at a certain point. So we're talking about sustainability and what that looks like for our livelihoods at this point, at least for me and my household. So it is scary for me. I am scared.
But so
Yeah.
motivate you.
Yeah, thanks for the
Use
honesty,
it.
because that's why I was quiet too, because I was like, how to not be scared when you are scared.
Yeah.
You can just work through it, breathing exercises, yoga, like turn the Twitter off and not look at stuff. And I don't know, it's that kind of thing, like have your coping mechanisms, your healthy coping mechanisms, because it is scary, but it's not going anywhere.
So
So
the other thing too I'll add is like when I'm afraid or when I feel insecure in some way, especially financially or business wise or personally, like the only thing that gives me a sense of security is taking action. So like when I'm actively opposing this legislation, or when I'm
yeah.
communicating and articulating why this is so important to my friends who have questions about why they should oppose this, when I ask them to do it, like making sure I'm making effort and I'm taking action around this makes me feel, and maybe, falsely, but makes me feel like I have some security or control with the outcome, even if not entirely. At least I've done my part, or I've tried to do my part so that other people are making better informed decisions. And that gives me a little bit of peace of mind. It's like I know my direct people that I've impacted or that I can touch and reach out and talk to, they're going to make better choices because I voiced my concerns and opinions and informed them.
Totally.
I've got a question that came online. It says, I'm an adult creator and I don't want kids to look at my content either. I feel like I don't know the solution. Um, is there a way that you can explain to other creators sort of what, I guess people get confused about age verification and the fight over, like, how would you answer that?
Well, they're not gonna see your content, they'll just see someone else's from another country's website hosting that doesn't require age verification, that may be more volatile on their computer or not, but it doesn't protect them in any way. It just redirects children to other sites. So you're
Or they'll
also,
see your content, yeah.
yeah, so whether the children aren't seeing your content, the adults are not now either. And not as much, because how many people are going to be willing to do all these, ID uploads for every different website? Um, so yeah, I mean, it doesn't shield the kids, it just redirects them.
Yeah. If I could add on to that, is just we have a lot of tools at our disposal for as I'm not a parent, so I don't want to speak from a parent's lens, but there are parental controls, there are device locks, there are things you can put into place to keep people that are not of 18 plus age to not see content like this. There's things you can do in your household, there's things you can, sites you can block, just certain sites specifically. Like there's so much age gating you can do inside your household or as a person in general, that this is such an oversight. Because to Lotus's point, if you go on, like the whole internet cannot be policed. These laws only apply to the US or certain states currently in the US. So they're still going to go online. They're going to go to another site that has zero regulation because it's outside the US. And they're going to see really likely and ethically made content that doesn't require verified uploads from actual creators in the industry and in our space. So all this policy does is it doesn't stop kids from seeing anything. It just puts them at more risk from other sites that don't create content ethically. So if you want someone who's not 18 to not see that content, you need to go and set up your parental controls. You need to go set up these device locks. You need to kind of take those steps to prevent that yourself, which is something we all have access and capability to do. So I know with the name of like bills like this, where it says age verification, that as a concept, it's like, well, of course, I don't want someone
Yeah.
seeing my content, of course.
Yes.
But you have to think about what that really looks like logistically when it comes down to it, because stopping Sesta Fosta and like let's stop trafficking and like all of them sound great on the title, like on the clickbait. We live in a
Right.
clickbait world. These are clickbait bills. So you have to do some more due diligence past that, because it doesn't actually solve the problem.
And that's exactly what I meant earlier when I said they're insidious and they're sneaky with the way that they're trying to pass these bills. They word them in ways that like from first hearing it, you're like, yeah, automatically that sounds like a good idea. But the wording and the way it's structured is actually not about age verification. It's about killing an industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say most of the time, I talk with a lot of press, and the first question that I get is, why do you want kids to be able to access porn? Right. And so the first thing that you always have to answer is, we don't. We don't want them to access porn, right? That it's adult content. It's called the adult industry for a reason. It's for adults and it's by adults. We don't want kids accessing it. And we're happy to work with you to find solutions to keep kids from accessing adult content, right? As Melrose talked about, there's parental filters. Most parents aren't using any filters, right? There are filters that come on your home Wi-Fi. There are filters on the devices, right? There's all these different ways that you can do it. And so that's the first point. The second is, and I think that Lotus mentioned, right? They're going elsewhere. So these laws that have been passed are really ineffective at keeping minors from accessing adult content, right? The laws largely exclude sites like Twitter and Reddit, so they can just easily go to these sites. The laws exclude sites, by and large, they effectively exclude sites that are outside the country, right? Pirate sites, all this other stuff. So you may support age verification. I think everybody sort of supports the idea that minors shouldn't be accessing adult content. But if you pass a law that is really bad, it's poorly written, it's poorly designed, its real purpose is to sort of crush the legal industry, right? Rather than to protect kids.
Yeah.
I don't think that kids are accessing adult content any less in states that have had these laws go into effect.
No.
What you've seen is that content just redirects. So they're going to sites, they're going to sites that may even have your content, but it's stolen content.
Yeah.
Because now it's not just kids, but adults can't access you. And so they're searching you. They're trying to find a site that has your content that isn't age verified. They're going, and so it encourages piracy, right? It encourages, leaked videos, right? We go, and FSC has obviously looked at these as well. When these states pass these laws, what we see is a growth in traffic to sites that are not taking down pirated content, or not taking down revenge porn or leaked content. It may not be taking down CSAM or other sort of violent stuff. And so I think that it's important to start out in these conversations acknowledging that same thing. We don't want this either, but we want a solution that will be effective. We want a solution that will actually keep kids from accessing this content and won't destroy a legal industry.
Yeah. Basically, they're trying to kill small American online businesses state by state in favor of piracy and those kinds of websites outside of the country. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We've got another question from Bryce Bolt, who says, what are the most impactful ways to get involved politically to support sex work? Are there organizations to volunteer or paid work to offer advocacy? I'm ramping up a career in sex work while maintaining a full-time white-collar but unionized professional career. So I guess sort of saying, like, outside, I obviously want to advocate for content creation. I want to advocate for, like, using your voice. Lotus, I know you work with a bunch of different organizations. Are there places where someone like Bryce could sort of get involved?
Outside of FSC, I do also work with Decrim Sex Work California. It's an organization that got started in the pandemic with the collection of different sex work advocates and sex workers in California. And our goal is to decriminalize sex work in California so that it can positively influence the rest of the country, since a lot of legislation, if it starts in California, sometimes trickles out to the rest of the states. So that's our goal. You can donate to our cause. I believe our website is decrimsexworkca.org or com. I'm not sure. I'd have to type it in and it'll pop up. But either way, there's that. There's also SWAP, which has different branches throughout the country. SWAP LA here in LA, they're really active. Thanks, Allison, for putting that in the chat. They're really active in LA as far as doing a lot of community outreach among sex workers, a lot of in-person events and workshops. So that's something that can help as far as volunteering, I think on Decrim's Sex Work California page, we have a volunteer section where you can fill out and submit your willingness to volunteer. But also with FSC, you can volunteer. You can email us at info@freespeechcoalition.com. And volunteering with us would just mostly look like getting out messages like this. It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of organizations. Again, I do think that, like, think about yourselves individually and what you have. Like, I know that organizations, it can be hard to figure out timing and all the rest of it. You have jobs and platforms that you can do anytime. I think that think of these organizations as a resource for you. I think that what you're going to do online, what you're going to do on social media, what you're going to do, in terms of rallying other creators is going to be far more effective sometimes than trying to figure out with an organization's schedule when is the next volunteer opportunity. Really, I really want you to feel empowered in terms of like what you have. Like, you have a massive tool.
Yeah, totally.
Let's see. We're getting close to the end. So if there's can you speak to the differences in advocacy work in AV bills, which are mostly not partisan, versus Project 2025 and Agenda 47, which is very much from the far right? What are the differences in these approaches? I'm going to mention real quickly, I think that because there is a misunderstanding around a lot of these things, that the AV bills are not partisan, right? I think that that's one of the things that we have seen the proponents of the bills push forward, right? Is that, like, this is a bipartisan legislation. This is something that is not, we just want to protect the children. Absolutely not. So the people who have been introducing the bills, the states where these bills have largely passed, have been deeply conservative. The people who are passing these bills are faith-based groups that are going to legislators by and large and saying, hey, listen, I want this bill passed, and I've donated a lot of money to your campaign. I want it through. These groups also, so they want age verification for pornography. What they don't say, but does what ends up in the bill, what doesn't make it into newspapers often, is that pornography is defined incredibly broadly, right? So it can be LGBTQ content, it can be, books, it can be sex ed resources. There's all of these different ways in which, the idea of material harmful to minors, this sort of broad category, that the language of the bill can be drawings, it can be text, right? We see Toni Morrison getting pulled out of school libraries. We see public libraries starting to add age verification because they're afraid that somebody is going to come into a library, a kid is going to come to a library and access a book that has the mention of sex in it. And so they want sort of people running scared. So I think that what happens is these legislators from the right push in this legislation, and it becomes very hard to vote against because it sounds like you're voting for kids having access to pornography.
Yes.
So Lotus used the word insidious. I think that that is a great sort of description as to what's happening. It's not bipartisan legislation. It's largely coming from the right. There is largely an agenda that, I talk about it like it's Project 2024, right? Because Project 2025 is the agenda for the first 180 days of a second Trump administration. Project 2024 is what's happening now, which is these bills are being passed. They are attacking sex workers. They are attacking the LGBTQ community. They're attacking books around race and sex and gender, right? They want to roll back all of this stuff. So it's not super bipartisan. And yeah, we are actually at time. So I want to be respectful. This is ongoing. Thank you so much for everyone who showed up. Follow us at FSC Army on Twitter, at It's Lotus Lain on Twitter as well, and Melrose at Melrose Michaels or at Sexwork CEO on Twitter, or any of the other socials. Is there anything else that ways people can contact you that you want to put out there?
I feel like you said them. My link is in my bio.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
The only other thing is cosociety.app if you want to join the close community. We put, calls to action for advocacy in there. So like opposing age verification was one that we did, and we activated, a whole bunch of creators to just, they saw the post, they clicked the link, they opposed in their state. So it's another communication channel if you want to stay informed.
Great. All right. Thank you all. We'll be posting resources that were in the chat on FSC Army as a follow-up. If you have any questions, again, reach out, info@freespeechcoalition.com, and we'll do our best to help. Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing everything that you guys create.
Bye guys. Thank
Bye.
you.